The morning sun poured through the thin curtains of the Harris household, brushing across the faded family. Photos that lined the living room wall, pictures that once told stories of laughter, of birthdays and camping trips, of a family that used to feel whole. John Harris, 58 years old, sat at the kitchen table nursing a mug of black coffee, his hands strong but scarred from years of factory work, wrapped around the cup as if holding on to something warm in a cold life. He glanced at the clock. 10:05 a.m. Another ordinary Sunday, or at least it was supposed to be. The smell of burnt toast wafted from the toaster. He smiled faintly. It reminded him of the days when his wife, Linda, used to wake him with breakfast before the kids even got up. But Linda was gone now, not gone as in dead, but gone as in distant. She slept in the guest room now. Love, it seemed, had slowly dissolved into quiet resentment and empty routines. John sighed, pushing the thought away. Today, he told himself, would be different. It was Father's Day. Maybe, just maybe, his kids had remembered the family. At 8 a.m., the sound of footsteps echoed down the hallway. His son Michael, 25, stumbled into the kitchen wearing headphones, eyes glued to his phone. "Morning, Dad," he mumbled, sliding a piece of bread into the toaster without looking up. "Morning, Mike." John smiled, waiting for something, anything. But his son didn't even glance his way, just nodded absently, grabbed his toast, and disappeared back into his room. Moments later, Sophie, his daughter, 21, college student, always in a hurry, came out, hair still damp from the shower. "Hey, Dad, can you transfer me $50? My card's maxed again." "Good morning to you too," he said softly. She paused, half embarrassed, half annoyed. "Sorry, I'm just in a rush. Please? I'll pay you back next week." John opened his wallet, though he already knew what he'd find. A few bills? Gas money? Grocery cash? Nothing extra. He looked at her pleading eyes and sighed. "All right, Sophie. I'll send it later today." She kissed him on the cheek quickly. "You're the best, Dad." And then she was gone, out the door, into her car, and off to her world. Silence returned to the Harris home. The forgotten day. Hours passed. The clock ticked. The sunlight shifted across the floor. John sat on the couch, pretending to watch TV. But his eyes weren't on the screen. He was waiting for something else, a sign, a card, a hug. "A happy Father's Day, Dad." At noon, Linda finally came out of her room, dressed neatly, perfume on. "Going somewhere?" John asked. She adjusted her earrings without looking at him. "Brunch with the kids." John frowned. "The kids?" "Yes, Sophie texted me this morning. They wanted to take me out. Said it's been a while." The words hit like a punch. "They're taking you out today?" She hesitated. "Well, yes. I didn't know you'd want to come. It's Father's Day, Linda." She blinked, realizing too late what she'd said or hadn't said. "Oh, John, I'm sure it's just—" He raised his hand slightly. "Don't. Just go. Enjoy yourself." She stood awkwardly, guilt flickering for a moment before pride smothered it. Then she picked up her purse and left. The door clicked shut. John stared at it for a long time, the sound of silence louder than any scream. Memories of yesterday. He wandered into the garage, his quiet place, where old boxes sat piled like ghosts of the past. Inside one, he found a tiny, hand-painted mug. "Number 1, Dad," written in childish scrawl. Sophie had made it in 3rd grade. Another box held a crooked wooden frame with a photo of him and Michael fishing, smiling under the sun. He picked up the photo, brushing the dust off. "How do we end up like this?" he whispered to no one. He thought of all the birthdays he never missed, the night shifts he worked to pay for their school trips, the times he came home exhausted but still helped with homework. And now? Forgotten on the very day meant for him. The ache in his chest grew heavy, but under it something else stirred. Not anger, not bitterness. A deep, cold clarity. He realized how invisible he had become, how people can take a man's effort, his love, his sacrifices, and forget his soul. The call. Around 1 p.m., John's phone buzzed. "Sophie," He picked up quickly. Hey, sweetheart. Hey, Dad. Sorry, I forgot to tell you. We're at Mom's friend's restaurant. You should have come. He forced a chuckle. Didn't sound like there was room. Oh, Dad, don't be dramatic, she said with a small laugh. We'll bring you something later, okay? The line went dead. John stared at the silent phone. 1,000 words pressed at his throat, but none came out. He set the phone down gently on the table and sat there, quiet, motionless as the day turned to dusk. Outside, the neighborhood filled with laughter and barbecue smoke. Children ran through sprinklers. Families gathered for dinner, and somewhere, a man across the street got a handmade card from his daughter. John watched it all through the window, unseen and uncelebrated. The decision, that night, he sat at his desk, staring at a blank sheet of paper. His hand trembled slightly as he picked up the pen. He didn't plan to write a letter, not at first. He just wanted to empty his heart, to release the weight that had been pressing against it for years. But as the words began to flow, something inside him clicked. He wasn't just writing for himself. He was writing for them, the people who had forgotten him. Dear family, I don't know if you'll ever understand what it means to be invisible in your own home. You might read this and feel guilty, or maybe you'll laugh it off. That's up to you. But today, I realized something important. I've spent my whole life being needed, not loved. I fixed the leaking roof. I paid the bills. I showed up to every parent-teacher meeting. But somewhere along the way, I stopped being John. I just became Dad, a title, not a person. You all have your lives now, and I don't blame you for that. But today, as I sat alone on Father's Day, I felt something break quietly inside me. And maybe that's not a bad thing. Maybe breaking is how the light gets in. He paused, tears sliding down his face. The clock ticked softly behind him. He kept writing. I'm not angry. I'm just done chasing people who can't see me. I gave you all my years, my hands, my health, but I forgot to save something for myself. Starting tomorrow, I'm leaving for a while. Don't worry, I'm not disappearing, just finding the part of me I lost. I need to remember what it feels like to live, not just exist. Maybe one day, you'll understand that a father's heart can be strong and still be broken. When he finished, he folded the letter neatly and placed it on the kitchen table. Then he packed a small bag, a few clothes, his fishing rod, and that old photo of him and the kids. As he walked out the door, the night air hit his face like freedom. He didn't know where he was going, but for the first time in years, it didn't matter. The next morning, the Harris's driveway stood empty, except for the faint outline of tire marks. Inside the house, sunlight spilled across the kitchen table, catching the edge of an envelope. In simple handwriting, it read, "For my family." 1. The discovery. At 8 a.m., Linda came down in her robe, still half asleep. She saw the note, frowned, and opened it. Her eyes traced the words slowly. At first, she thought it was just one of John's quiet reflections. But as the sentences deepened, I'm leaving for a while. I need to remember what it feels like to live. Her heart began to pound. She called upstairs, voice cracking. Michael, Sophie, come down now. Both appeared bleary-eyed, confused. What's wrong? Michael asked. It's Dad, Linda whispered, handing them the letter. Sophie took it first, reading aloud in a shaky voice. By the time she reached, "A father's heart can be strong and still be broken," her throat closed. Where did he go? She asked. Linda shook her head. He didn't say. For a long moment, none of them spoke. The TV murmured in the background. A Father's Day commercial replaying cheerful families hugging their dads. The irony burned. 2. The search. Michael grabbed his keys. He can't just disappear. He doesn't even have friends to stay with. Sophie muttered, maybe he just needed air. Linda looked toward the window. No, he's never done anything like this. They checked his closet, half empty. Fishing rod, gone. His old pickup, missing. Michael clenched his jaw. He's headed north. Lake Country. He always talked about that cabin near Sand Creek. Within an hour, they were on the road. The car hummed quietly as miles rolled by. None of them spoke much, the air thick with guilt and unspoken truths. Sophie stared out the window, remembering the way her dad used to sing off-key during long drives. Michael gripped the wheel harder. Flashes of childhood flickering, baseball games, bedtime stories, the way John had clapped the loudest when he graduated. "Why didn't we do anything yesterday?" Sophie whispered. Michael didn't answer. He didn't need to. 3. At the lake. They found the truck parked near an old wooden pier, facing a lake shimmering in the morning light. A small cabin stood nearby, weathered but peaceful. John sat on the porch, sipping coffee from a tin mug. He looked thinner somehow, yet more alive. When they stepped out of the car, he didn't look surprised. He simply smiled, gentle, almost sad. "Didn't think you'd find me this quick," he said. Linda's eyes filled. "John, what is this? You scared us." "I didn't mean to," he replied softly. "I just needed space, a day to breathe." Michael took a hesitant step forward. "Dad, you should have told us." John chuckled quietly. "Would you have listened?" The silence that followed answered him. Sophie's voice broke. "We forgot, didn't we? Father's Day." He looked at her kindly. "I think you just got busy being young. It happens." Tears welled in her eyes. "I'm sorry, Dad." John nodded, eyes glistening. "So am I sorry for letting myself fade away without saying a word?" 4. Conversations by the water. They sat by the lake that afternoon, wind rustling through the trees. John told them stories they'd never heard, how he met their mom in a diner when she spilled coffee on his shirt, how terrified he'd been holding Michael for the first time, how proud he'd been when Sophie learned to ride a bike. Each memory cracked the ice around their hearts a little more. Linda listened, tears silently falling. "John, I forgot how gentle you are," she whispered. He smiled faintly. "You didn't forget, Linda, you just stopped looking." She nodded, unable to argue. Michael finally said, "You were right in that letter. Dad, we treated you like a service, not a person." John looked out over the water. "All I ever wanted was to matter beyond what I could give." A long silence stretched between them, heavy and healing. Then Sophie leaned her head on his shoulder. "You still matter. We just needed a wake-up call." 5. The letter that stayed. They convinced John to come home that evening, but before leaving, he tucked the letter back into the envelope and slid it into Michael's hands. "Keep it," he said. "Read it when life starts pulling you away from the people who love you." At home, they hung it on the family board, not as a reminder of guilt, but of gratitude. Days turned into weeks. Small things changed first, Michael calling his dad after work, Sophie visiting on weekends just to talk, Linda moving her things back into their old bedroom, and John? He smiled more, fished again, learned how to rest without guilt. The house felt alive for the first time in years. 6. 1 year later. The next Father's Day arrived warm and bright. The kitchen smelled of pancakes and maple syrup. John woke to laughter, real, joyful laughter, spilling from the hallway. "Don't drop it," Sophie whispered, carrying a tray. Michael followed with a card. They entered the room shouting, "Happy Father's Day!" John blinked, stunned. "You remembered?" Sophie grinned. "How could we forget? You wrote it down for us." She handed him a small wrapped box. Inside was a leather-bound notebook engraved, "For your next letter, but only happy ones." John laughed, eyes damp. "Guess I'll have to write a new confession." Linda sat beside him, holding his hand. "No more confessions, John, just living." He looked around at his grown children smiling, the morning light catching on the same old photos, and for the first time in years, the ache inside him softened into peace. 7. The final words. That night, after everyone had gone to bed, John opened the notebook and began to write. "A year ago, I left because I felt unseen. Today, I stay because I'm finally seen again." Sometimes leaving isn't about running away. It's about teaching people where your heart truly begins. He closed the book, placed it beside the old letter, and turned off the lamp. Outside, the Midwest sky glittered with quiet stars, the same stars that had watched him through heartbreak. And now, through healing, and somewhere deep inside, John Harris finally felt at home.